So I'll start. My name is Kiana. Industrial organizational psychology is my background in trade. I am based in NYC, but you might see me around just about anywhere. Um, just finished a presentation for the Society for Criminal Police and Psychology to talk about virtual job analysis. Um, it's funny because we used to submit, those presentations even back in like 2017, 2018. And I feel like they were a lot more nuanced. And now um, there's a lot more of an understanding of the feasibility of the use of virtual reality tools and gaming assessment in the actual process, you know? So, the group was very responsive yesterday. Um, even had some folks who were interested in like getting started. Like, I think that this would be great, for my organization and municipality. And I feel like it's the post, pandemic era that brought about that understanding of the feasibility and the importance of including um, the use of technology in exams, particularly the use of virtual reality in exams. That there's been a movement to reduce reliance on the SATs for a long time. But
Mhm.
again, the pandemic, right, where they just like waived these requirements were basically just waived, right? And I think that as a part of a natural experiment, they might have realized that there wasn't really a great difference in the quality of candidates that came in with no GMAT, GRE, or whatever SAT
Mhm.
versus candidates who did. And so it allowed everyone to see all in one fell swoop that their reliance on these exams might not be as necessary as they might once have thought. Um, and don't get me wrong, I think that for good assessment, that they can make a big difference. Um, certainly all municipalities and all organizations are not going to get rid of their tests. So this is not the moment
Mm.
to celebrate. I wanted to ask Valerie about what are your thoughts on the use of certifications? We just were talking about the use of predictive assessments in education and how there's a decreasing reliance on the SAT and those types of exams to predict performance in universities. So I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the trends in your current certifications, and whether you think that the demand is growing or shrinking.
Well, with the certifications that we do for our clients, they are all engineers, most of them. And so the certifications that we do are in some case required for their jobs. So, they definitely have to take an exam for the initial certification, and then they have to submit CEUs to maintain it. So it's intended to be an ongoing process. So it's not like a one time, here's where you are, and then you kind of stay there. Now, I think kind of going back to your comments about the SATs, um, I think kind of at that level for educational, they probably are not the best indicator of, success for the kids, because you can have some kids who score very well on the test. And now that you have so many companies teaching to the test, and you kind of really realize, is it really a true assessment?
Mm.
And then, kind of as you said, it doesn't really predict how well they're going to handle college, because, there's a whole lot more in college than just going to classes.
I agree, and you know, whether the demand for predictive assessment is declining in higher education. I think that the trend is actually going in the opposite direction when it comes to workforce. I think that the world is realizing that credentials are actually a much shorter pathway than higher education
Mm.
of attending university, and it's not something that everybody can handle. You
No.
know, it's not attainable for everyone, and we're all walking around with this debt. You know, that the Congress is trying to figure out what to do with now, but you know, it's not a great service to the community and society to have people burdened with so much debt before they're entering the workforce. And I think that that's another realization that people are coming to. You know, if your certification, you know, if you can practice for a few years and then pursue a certification, it might cost you, you know, all of $1,200 or $2,000, but you're not going to have $200,000 of debt to pay back, and
Yeah.
that's a big differentiator too.
People are still paying 30 and 40 years after they graduated. They're still
Very
paying.
much,
Mhm.
very much.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, and Valerie spoke a little bit towards the definition for certification. Certification in practice is certifying folks who are already in an industry practicing. So this will sometimes get conflated with certificates. You know, we also, a part of credentialing, part of the credentialing package include certificates, and certificates are often given to folks who might attend a program or learn something, a very specific skill or ability. We'll give them a certificate of attendance or a certificate of knowledge acquisition at the end of that program, not to be confused with a certification. Certification is generally anchored by a job analysis, and certification is used to certify a practitioner in an industry or in a field. So, you know, generally there are also requirements around experience. We might look at your portfolio, right, in order to qualify you to take a certification exam, because we're not just certifying that you attended a class or that you have one competency or skill, but we are certifying that you are a practitioner, a competent practitioner in the field or industry or in the job at hand. So this deck of slides is supposed to talk about certification operation, which is a wide scoping range, and we'll hit a couple of topics at a high level overview. We had some statistical stuff in there. Some of it I deleted. A lot. I used to have a lot of statistically heavy content in a lot of my presentations early on, but it was almost like clockwork the moment when people's eyes would start to glaze over. And so I've veered more on the side of not being so stat heavy, because I think also conceptually it's not so much that people need to understand which statistics we use to validate a concept, but that they understand the use and the intent and the purpose of the assessment or of the certification or of the things that we do. And through that, they'll be able to understand why we use statistical practice that we do. So this is a definition for certification operation. Refers to comprehensive management execution of all tasks related to providing, maintaining, and ensuring relevance and integrity of the certification program. This is what Valerie is managing for her clients. Um, some folks will do that work in-house. Others will use an external vendor to support certification operations, because it's a ton of work. It's a ton of work, even for the clients that we've had who have developed their own credential. The maintenance of that credential is actually a lot of work. You know, you'll see some folks who just kind of popped up a test and never went back to validate it, never went back to look at the item. The test questions are 100 years old. This is not a test that's going to have any predictive power. If you really want to have a certification or exam that works properly, it needs to be well maintained, and that takes a lot of work. So we've got a couple of the aspects of examination, of certification operations listed here. I'll talk more specifically about the examination related stuff because there are other folks who handle some of the other stuff. But generally, you've got examination process, application renewal, verification, and audits. You've got all of these different moving parts that are required in order to maintain a certification. We're generally focused more so on the examination process, and included in that might be continuous improvement of the examination. So in general, most examinations are developed, again, anchored on a job analysis. A job analysis is conducted approximately every 5 to 6 years, depending on the field and the pace and movement of the industry. After that practice, the results of the job analysis are used to anchor the item development and development of the test plan. The job analysis should result in a task and KSA list. That's a list of knowledge, skills, and abilities. Some people are adding other stuff in there, other characteristics. There might be some personality traits that are included in your ability to do your job. One example of that I can think of is like, sales, a sales role or something like that requires, some personality, right? Something where you have to work with the community, where they want you to have a very specific personality type, maybe openness to experience, or something like that, to be able to predict your ability to work with people. But so you're going to have a KSAO or a KSA list, and then that's developed to create the test plan. And through the test plan, you determining, how heavily do you want to weight the importance of one particular key factor over another. So is there one skill that's more important, or one ability that's more important than another ability in the performance of this job role? If so, then just to give you an example, that one skill will be weighted at 80% of your exam, and then the skill that's less so will be weighted at 20% of your exam. You'll then convene your item writing committee, your item review committees, and you'll commence the writing and reviewing of items. Those items are generally maintained in a database that is maintained and reviewed sometimes annually, sometimes on an ongoing basis. Some assessments certainly have more items than others. On average, I would say most assessments will have approximately 100 items. And so they'll be fed by a database that has about 400 items in it. We're not necessarily looking at all of the items all of the time, but you should be collecting statistics on all the items all of the time, and maybe reviewing the ones that get flagged by a set criteria that you've created or that your psychometric vendor has created. And so this in here, you see curriculum listed there. I'll say that most of the exams that we work with are standardized or accredited by some kind of a process. We talked a little bit earlier about ANAB accreditation. ICE has ICE also does accreditation as well with the NCCA. And through that accreditation process, you'll see that there's a requirement for separation, particularly for certifications of your training or your preparation and your assessment. And so Those are going to be two separate sides of the house, even if as a candidate going through the process, you might see them as sort of happening together. When you're inside of the inner workings of an association or any organization that's maintaining a credential, um, those two sides are supposed to be separate because, again, for certification, we're not certifying that we've taught you a curriculum. We're certifying that you are knowledgeable in practice. And so if you go through a curriculum review process, if you go through a curriculum or if you go through some kind of content review process to help yourself prepare for the certification, the intention is not that we're training you. The intention more so is a preparatory phase. Okay, so we talk about the other thing I'll talk about a little bit is accessibility and inclusivity. Because I think that remote assessments have done a major thing in terms of making assessments accessible to a broad variety of people. In some of the industries that we work with, there's a requirement for people to be fairly mobile. So I don't necessarily always see the wider variety of people that do not have access to certifications. But I'll always make a call in this moment to encourage people to continue to be able to offer certification remotely, continue to test remotely, because it's almost, particular for your candidates who have some different ability level, whatever that ability level is, it gives them the opportunity to test in an environment that is customly designed for them. And then we've added inclusivity there. Because I think that just the test environment itself can be quite daunting. And I think that for candidates who might be a little bit freaked out by the assessment center, you got a lot of people out there with assessment center phobia, test taking phobias. I think that giving them the ability to take that assessment in the comfort of their home or an environment that they're able to create and control can go a long way actually in helping to better predict their performance with less error.